This is my second video update for the day, coming to you from downtown Athens, Greece. And we have some breaking news. And that breaking news has to do with the visa travel ban. The EU officials, they met today in Prague this Wednesday to discuss an EU-Russian travel ban. And we have the first statements coming out of the Hungarian foreign minister, Peter Szijjártó, who said that there was no consensus among EU member states to the proposed full ban for Russian tourists. This is a quote from the Hungarian foreign minister, as quoted by a journalist from the news agency MTI. The key word there is full ban. I am getting the news that the overall compromise, so that everyone can go home and say that they were victorious, the countries that were against the travel ban and the countries that were for the travel ban, the compromise is going to be, as I said in my morning update, the cancellation of the simplified visa, of the visa facilitation program, and the implementation of just a one-time entry visa with a fee imposed every time Russians want to travel to Europe. That is what I believe is going to be the final outcome to all of this, which is essentially a Russian travel ban. That's what it is. Any Russian that wants to travel to the EU, okay, if you want to travel to the EU, get a Schengen visa, just a one-shot deal, okay, you go to the embassy, you pay your 50 euros, whatever it's going to be, and you can visit Europe for a couple of weeks, but that's it. It's not going to be an easy process. You're going to have to fill out a lot of paperwork and documentation, pay the fee, and then you can travel to Europe. And if you want to do it again, you have to go through the process all over again. That's going to be the compromise, so that the EU can, so that they can say, well, we're tough on Russia because we suspended the visa facilitation program. So we suspended that. No multi-entry, no multi-length visas for Russians, but we're not discriminating against the Russian people because we still offer a simplified visa. That's what I've been saying from day one is going to happen. That's what I believe will happen. As a matter of fact, this is news that I'm just getting right now, EU decides to terminate agreement with Russia on simplified visa regime, according to the Hungarian minister, Peter Szijjártó. This is according to a notification I just got from Sputnik News. I can't open that because the Sputnik News site is banned from from being open. This is the application. I can't open it in Europe because of the EU censorship on Russian news agencies. Anyway, that is what it looks like is going to happen. We'll see as the day progresses what the final outcome is going to be. But that is where it is heading. The compromise deal to all of this is, as I outlined in my morning video, and as I've been saying from the beginning, the termination of the multi-entry, multi-length visa and sticking with a very simple 30-day short-term one-time visa. Everyone in the EU can go back home and they can virtue signal to their constituents. Cyprus, Greece, Germany, France, they can go back and say, look, Portugal, look, we didn't ban Russian travel. You see hotel industry, you see tourist industry. We're not banning Russian travel. Russians can still get the one-time visa and visit beautiful sunny Greece. And then Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Finland can go back to their citizens and they can say, you see, we're tough on Russia. We are stopping the Putin war machine. Regime change is coming in the Kremlin because we are banning multi-entry Schengen visas for Russian citizens. So that's the compromise. At the end of the day, the hardliners won. The hardliners have won at the end of the day because they got the easy, important, mostly used visa banned. If it's going as the reports I'm getting indicate, and if it's going as the Hungarian foreign minister says in the statements that I'm reading. So let's see how it develops, and I'm sure what I'm reporting is going to be how the ministers how they come out agreeing. Anyway, let's do some more stories while I've got a second update underway. Gazprom shares hit an all-time high. Gazprom is killing it. I wonder why. Russian energy major Gazprom's stock jumped 31% on Wednesday to 267.25 rubles per share, just over $4.43 on the Moscow exchange, following the company's announcement of bumper profits and dividend payouts to shareholders. The gas giant said its board had recommended a dividend of 51.03 Russian rubles, or 85 cents per ordinary share, for the first half of 2022. In its first half earnings report released on Tuesday, Gazprom announced a record of 2.5 trillion rubles, or 41.75 billion in net profit. Let's read the quote here. Despite sanctions pressure and an unfavorable external environment, the Gazprom Group reported record IFRS revenues and net profit in the first half of 2022, while reducing net debt and leverage to a minimum. Gazprom's deputy chief executive, Famil Sadigov, said in a statement, he elaborated that after adjustments, the base for paying dividends reached 2.4 trillion rubles, almost $40 billion. All right, so Gazprom is killing it. I wonder why. Why is Gazprom doing so well? Gosh, I just can't figure that one out. So China is aggressively reselling Russian gas to Europe. So here's the deal of what's going on with China. Gazprom is sending all that gas to China, and it's sending a lot of LNG, record LNG, to China, and China is soaking up all of that Russian natural gas. And because China's undergoing a bit of a slump and doesn't quite have the demand for all that Russian gas, it is taking much of that LNG gas and it is sending it to Europe. And the Europeans, because they want a virtue signal to their population and say, look, we are stopping the Putin war machine. We're not using Russian gas. You see how tough we are. You see how virtuous we are. Well, they're not saying that the gas that they are selling to their population at 3 to 5 to 10x is actually Russian gas, but it's just coming from China. So China's making money, Russia and Gazprom is making money, and EU citizens are paying, electricity bills, gas bills, oil prices, whatever it is. They're paying 3, 5, 10 times more. But hey, at least they can pretend. They can pretend to say that they're not using Russian gas when they are using Russian gas. And the interesting part about this is that if China continues to export LNG to Europe at these record rates, Europe may actually get to 80% storage capacity, according to this report. But of course, that doesn't mean that the EU is out of its gas crisis. It just means that it's going to have 80% of the storage targets filled, which means that the EU is going to burn through that storage, which is actually meant to be there for emergency reasons. It's going to burn through that because no gas is flowing from Europe to Europe via Nord Stream 1 or Nord Stream 2, which is ready and waiting there. And they're going to have to use the emergency storage facilities, which means that Europe is going to be in deep poo-poo in a few months come winter, when that storage capacity goes from 80% to 0. So let me go to Zero Hedge here and see if I can pick out some interesting quotes. Make no mistake, all of this excess LNG was sourced in part or in whole in Russia, but since it has been told in China it is no longer Russian, it is instead, drumroll, Chinese LNG. Yep. The good news is that the 53 million tons that the EU bloc purchased surpasses imports by China and Japan and has brought Europe's gas storage occupancy rate up to 77%. If this continues, Europe is likely to reach its stated goal of filling 80% of its gas storage facilities by November, at which point it will start draining the reserves at a breakneck pace to keep warm during the winter. But while China's economic slump has brought much needed relief to Europe, it comes with a major footnote. As soon as economic activity bounces back in China, the situation will quickly reverse and Beijing will no longer re-export Russia LNG to keep Europe warm. Hilariously, it also means that instead of being dependent on Russia for gas, Europe is now becoming dependent on Beijing instead for its energy, which is still Russian gas, only this time imported from China, which makes a mockery of US geopolitical ambitions to defend a liberal international order with its own energy exports. Worse, while Europe could buy Russian LNG for price X, it instead has to pay 2x, 3x, or more just to virtue signal to the world that it won't fund Putin's regime, when in reality, it is paying extra to both Xi and to Putin, who is collecting a premium price thanks to the overall market scarcity. Oh boy. Hence Gazprom's record profits. And its nice dividend to shareholders as well. Meanwhile, people in Poland are lining up to purchase coal ahead of winter. I don't know if you saw the images there of people in Poland lining up to get some coal because they see what's coming this winter. The interesting part about it is that the EU, if I'm not mistaken, people in Poland, correct me if I'm wrong, the EU actually made it a point to shut down coal mines in Poland because of like EU rules and regulations and the common EU market. So Poland has an absolute abundance and excess of coal, but the EU actually shut down that production because, well, that's what the EU does. The Hungarian foreign minister, by the way, he came out with a statement, and he said with regards to European gas prices, which continue to soar, that Hungary had not yet fallen into this trap and warned that pressure from other EU governments would only get worse as the current world order is approaching a huge collapse, almost at the speed of an asteroid. Russian sources are integral to European energy security, the Hungarian foreign minister argued, implying that without them, social discontent could lead to systemic collapse. So Hungary is not taking the bait by jumping on board the we're not going to use Russian gas and oil and energy. And the foreign minister is warning that the rest of the EU, well, it's collapsing at the speed of an asteroid. And this is going to lead not only to economic collapse, but to just a wider systemic collapse. Do I have any more stories here? The United States is, the Pentagon, they're feeling very uncomfortable with their weapons stockpiles because they are getting, and I quote, uncomfortably low amid weapon transfers to Ukraine, according to officials. And finally, well, two more quick stories to talk about. We have that Gazprom on Tuesday cut off gas supplies to French utility company ENGIE. The Paris-based firm has failed to pay for July gas deliveries in full, and so Gazprom cut them off, and those gas deliveries are going to stop on September 1st until the moment it gets the full payment for already supplied gas in full, the energy giant said in a statement. So it's already supplied the gas and it's waiting for the payment. It also noted that the French side had failed to make the payment by Tuesday evening, making any further gas deliveries impossible under Russian law. So France's ENGIE has now been cut off. And Japan, fearing all of these cutoffs and fearing the energy collapse and perhaps A systemic collapse? Well, they have signed a new LNG deal with Russia's Sakhalin 2. Tokyo Gas, the largest city gas supplier in Japan, has signed a long-term LNG agreement with the new Russian operator of the Sakhalin 2 project to keep supply volumes from the project. The spokesperson for the Japanese company told Reuters on Tuesday in a second such deal between a firm from Japan and the new operator. So that is the situation with regards to Gazprom, with regards to the EU energy crisis and Japan and how they're handling things, and how Hungary is handling things, and how the EU is on course, right on course, for an energy and an economic collapse. Germany, by the way, Olaf Scholz, not Germany, but Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, he is now calling on EU members to abandon the right to veto in favor of majority voting in a number of key areas. So this would just basically, this is a move that Germany is trying to push through the EU, which would just basically mean that the EU can move towards more centralization, more authoritarianism, and more totalitarian rule of member states. So Olaf Scholz is saying, as the EU expands, because the EU has become a will take anybody club. It's not only an exclusive club anymore. It's not only a club where you have to have certain financial, fiscal, social, human rights kind of benchmarks in place. It's just now a club that is pretty much, do you hate Russia? Yes, we hate Russia. Will you imply sanctions on Russia? Yes. Will you try to go to war with Russia? Yes. Okay, come on in. That's pretty much the requirements now to enter the EU. Turkey, you don't want to go to war with Russia? You don't want to put sanctions on Russia? Okay, you can't come into the EU. Moldova, are you ready to go to war with Russia? Yeah. Okay, come into the EU. That's pretty much the requirements now for entering the European Union. And Olaf Scholz would like to see that when all these countries enter the will take anybody club, that if the EU wants to get certain things passed, certain key measures passed, well, then it's just going to be, it's not going to have, countries are not going to have a veto right anymore. It's just going to be a simple majority. That's it. And so some people are going to position this as, oh, this is good because now you're not going to have, the small states like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania vetoing things. But usually everything is in the opposite direction. Usually the way things go is that more rational and more sane countries, like, say, going back to this travel ban, like, I don't know, Portugal, which has said, let's not do a travel ban or else we're going to veto it, or Hungary saying we're going to veto it, or sanctions. Hungary saying we're going to veto sanctions. Well, that's going to be done with. Now you're going to have the crazy leaders in the crazy nations of the EU saying, we have a majority to place travel bans and oil sanctions and gas sanctions and all of these things. And it's usually in the crazy direction is what I want to say. It's usually, the majority is usually not in the rational, sane direction. So while some people may argue that the majority voting that Olaf Scholz is calling for could be good for the EU, it's going to most likely be very, very bad, because it means that all the crazies are now going to be able to majority vote for their crazy policies. And usually the countries that are rational and sane in the EU are like one or two. Hungary, and every now and then you could throw in a Cyprus or a Portugal. Every now and then you could throw that in there, but that's pretty much it. So this is a bad move by the EU. Well, for EU citizens, it's a bad thing. And you know that the EU is going to use the, if this goes through, if this proposal from Olaf Scholz goes through, then you know that the EU is going to use the majority voting in order to impose more authoritarian, totalitarian policies, and more crazy things as well. Ban Russian gas. Why? Because let's do it. And Hungary's going to be all alone saying, well, All right, guys. And the bad part about this is that if this passes and the EU moves to majority voting, that means that Hungary, in its opposition to banning Russian gas and oil, opa, it is going to rain. Thank God. Yes. That means that Hungary, in its opposition to banning, say, Russian oil and gas or whatever it is, imposing more sanctions, well, they're going to have to do it. And it also means that, stuff like digital things, you know what I mean? Digital money and identification and other things are just going to need majority approval. That's the real end game. So let's do a clown world and let me get inside soon before it rains, even though I'm very, very happy to have it rain. But let's do a really quick clown world. And this one has to do with TikTok. TikTok. The application. TikTok. Paris and Berlin. They want TikTokers deployed against Moscow. TikTokers and YouTubers could help the EU drive a wedge between the Russian government and the people, Germany and France reportedly told other members of the EU blocs. Ideas on how the EU could influence Russian citizens were formulated in a document circulated within the bloc ahead of this week's high-level meeting in Prague. Bloomberg reported on Monday the plan is meant for discussion behind closed doors, but the news agency said it had studied the document. Berlin and Paris suggested enrolling popular video bloggers on platforms including YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Telegram, and VKontakte to help disseminate EU-funded teaching courses on media literacy. According to Bloomberg, the courses will supposedly explain to Russians why they should dismiss Russian propaganda and trust independent information that counters what the Russian government says. There you go. People of Russia, the EU should also target Russian-speaking minorities in other nations with content that serves the same goal, the report says. There is also a proposal for an internet censorship circumvention hub for Russians. And of course, this information hub that is going to be targeted at Russian citizens inside of Russia and Russian speakers outside of Russia, this information hub is not going to be used in the future against EU's very own citizens with that nice majority voting that Olaf Scholz would like to get through the EU as well, right? This censorship and media indoctrination, it's not going to be used on the citizens of France and Germany and Greece and Portugal in the future. Not a chance. The enemy within strategy, the enemy within, whatever they're doing to Russia, they're going to reverse it and target it to all of us who are living in the EU. But so all the Russian citizens, while at the moment this will be targeted at Russian citizens, because the people of Russia, well, they just don't know that Putin is dishing out propaganda, and they need the all-wise and benevolent European Union to wake them up from their propaganda slumber and to teach them, to educate the Russian people that this is not how the world is, and that it's actually the evil authoritarian Putin who is misinforming you, and we're here now to help you, and we're going to help you in the form of TikTokers and Facebook people and VKontakte people and YouTubers. And maybe the EU is going to recruit me to help the Russian people wake up from their Kremlin propaganda. Wake up, Russian people, wake up. Kremlin propaganda. Wake up, everybody that's watching me in Russia. I'm telling you right now, it's all Kremlin propaganda. The EU is awesome. It's awesome. Cold showers and no street lights and 2,000 euros a month for electricity. It's awesome, everybody. It really is awesome. Anyway, that's the video, guys. theduran.locals.com. And check out Alexandra's channel. Check out the Duran's channel. And what else? ODYSEE, BitChute, and Rumble. Look for all of our channels there. I'm going to sign out. Take care.